Remember, what I want to do is I want to create parameters. I want to create variables. I want to make it so that the script is actually gonna flow properly. So what I did up here is I created those two parameters, one for computer name and username. Both are a string and both are mandatory. So that'll make sure that when this runs, that whoever initiates it has to put in a computer name and a username. And then all the commands, I'm putting them into a variable because I'll call those variables later when I run the output. So first I'm gathering the data, then I'm going through the process of actually doing something with the data. So this is simply a basic one where I'm just basically putting it into the variable. The next one, similar to that for the DNS server, the OS description, memory, last reboot, those are all very similar. Now we get down to the disk space. Notice I did a little bit something different here, is I do have that invoke command that we showed you. However, what I've done then is I have another variable where I'm using one of the built-in instruction sets, math, that allows me to round that out. So I'm taking that .free property from my object, I'm turning that over to gigabytes, and then I'm rounding it to 2 decimal places. So that'll give me a number in gigabytes with 2 decimal places. So I have an idea of how much space is left on my system. So the next one, when we're going and getting the AD user info, is what I want to do is I also want to point out if the user has never logged on their system. So in this case, I'm using an if statement. So I'm seeing if something is true or false. So for that, I've put my get-AD user command into the $last logon user variable. So what I then do is I'm doing an if. So if that last logon user variable is equal to null, so if there's no last logon date, then what it's going to do is it's going to put into that variable, user has not logged onto the network since account creation. So that way that'll get printed on my report when it gets created. Otherwise, it's simply going to leave that variable with the information that I got previously. So that's a cool way you can do a little bit of error checking. So the next one is just a basic one for the AD group membership, and then the printers as well. So then down at the bottom, I basically have all of my output. So what I've simply done is I just have a number of write-output statements, commands. And what I'm doing is, like for this one, I'm just basically creating a heading that's going to have username, and then it's going to put that variable in there. So remember, I'm using double quotes here. So to bring the value of the variable in there, at the end, I've simply put a semicolon and then double quotes, because semicolon lets you run multiple commands one after each other on the same line. So what this will do is this will give me a blank line. One of the things that's kind of tricky, and you'll see when we get the output, is it might not look exactly the way we want it. That's because we're not really doing any advanced report writing. That's kind of outside the scope of here. We're just looking to gather information. As you get further down the line with PowerShell, you'll get more into the formatting and different things you can get it to make it look nice. So I basically laid out everything in these write-outputs. So let's see what happens when we put this entire script together. So I'm going to go over to my PowerShell console, and we're going to go ahead and first thing what we're going to do is I want to take a look at the help for my script. So notice it gives me the help file. I can even do a -examples, and it'll bring back the examples. So this is all information that you can put into your script and make available. We're going to go ahead and call that script. get dash help. Notice if I leave it without the parameters, it's going to ask me to put those pieces of information in, and that comes back with a neat little report for me. So if we go up, we see we've got our username, our DNS information, all of the information that we had in there. So like I said, the formatting is not that great, but that's something that you can play around with. It does give us a good deal of data. So let's try running that with the parameters. So we put a dash computer name in, client02, dash username. I can use tab complete, J Garcia. Notice with this one, it has user has not logged onto the network since the account creation. That's that if statement that we created there. We could also set this out to a file. So if I wanted to have this in a text format, I definitely could. And then we'll just call that with Notepad, and there you go. So then that's a little report of what we have. So as you can see, how this can be helpful is that's a lot of information that we have for a user, and it comes up in seconds. So we get that user on the phone call, we find out their username and the computer they're on. We run this as we're just doing an initial hello, how are you doing, what's going on, and you have all of that information to work with. So this could be a very powerful tool as you're troubleshooting with users. And that's creating a script in PowerShell.